So I finally did it. I went out to see the Five Nights at Freddy's film, and I can definitely tell why the reviews are so polarizing, with the critics, the boomers, people over the age of 50, despising the film, thinking it's completely talentless, there's no good actors, there's inconsistencies, there's plot holes, and then you have the actual core fan base of Five Nights at Freddy's that are saying it's like the second coming of Christ and giving it like 9s and 10s out of 10s, and I think both sides are pretty wrong. So I did go and see the film. If you don't believe me, here is a tweet of me actually looking at the film poster before going inside to see it in Swedish. The film actually wasn't Swedish, thankfully. It was in English. It just had Swedish subtitles, so you just had like hurdudur meatball appearing every 2 seconds.
You look lonely. I can fix that.
Now, when I posted that tweet, it did all right. It got about like 18,000 likes or so. And then someone quote tweeted it because I said I didn't like the film, saying it's because they weren't fat enough. And this guy basically completely ratioed me getting over 50,000 likes. He's not wrong, but there are other reasons. So the things I like about the film, I think the actors did a really good job. For example, you had Mike Schmidt, played by the Hunger Games guy, and he did a really good job communicating that he was, you know, kind of a mentally unstable guy who had a very good relationship with his kid sister, but more importantly, lost his kid brother a very long time ago, and he hasn't really moved past that trauma. There was an opening part of the film, this is literally like 2 minutes into the film, it's not really a spoiler, where he beats up this kid's dad because he thinks like the kid's being kidnapped or something. It looks very aggressive, very weird. And at the time, I thought it was almost like a comedy, how much he flipped out, but there were some subtleties, like for example, some medication that he put away in the drawer, you didn't actually get the name of it, and also the fact we get these flashbacks of him losing his kid brother, so obviously there's some kind of tie there, and it, you know, he's reliving his trauma, so he acted it out on that guy. I feel like it's almost a film that you watch once, it's almost like a comedy film, but if I were to go and see it again, I'd, you know, look at a scene and be like, oh, so that's why that happened. Another good thing about the film as well was the animatronics. They actually rotated between like having actual like robots and then actors in suits, but it looked pretty convincing. You can really tell like the majority of the budget actually went into making these animatronics look as close to the games as possible. I remember there was like a meme going around originally of them having like red eyes and it looked really jarring, really stupid. And in the film, it doesn't really take away from it. I also thought Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, or Matthew Lillard, the actor, he played William Afton, and he did a really good job, usually because whenever he's cast in something, it's something very bizarre. Like, for example, he was one of the killers in the first Scream film, and also, yeah, like I said, he was Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
I'm okay, Scoob.
But he does a really good performance here. I just think they didn't really utilize him in the best way possible because he appears like pretty heavily in the first act of the film. He'll have a lot of conversations with Mike, trying to entice him to getting the job as a night guard working at Five Nights at Freddy's. Working at... I said working at Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, you have to keep that in.
I'm keeping that in. I'm keeping that in. And then working at Five Nights at Freddy's. It was actually a running gag that we had when I was watching the film, and it was basically that William was going to say to Mike, listen, we've got one job for you. You need to spend 5 nights at Freddy's. But like I said, he appears a lot in the opening of the film, trying to, you know, sell the job. But then he's completely absent for the rest of the film. And then he appears at the very end as, you know, well, the bad guy, as Springtrap. I've seen a lot of people basically say that the film is too lore heavy. And I definitely do agree with that because they try to dump so much so quickly. Like, for example, they don't even bring up the whole William Afton killing all the kids until basically 20 minutes before the film's over. I feel like the pacing has a really huge issue throughout the film. Like, plot threads will get brought up and then dumped and then just never really resolved. You also have Vanessa that appears from the Security Breach game as well. I'm not sure the woman who played her, I don't really care. And I feel like she did an okay job as an actress, but like the lines that they gave her was so bizarre. Like, for example, there's this one bit, I think halfway through the film, where the animatronics and Mike and Mike's kid sister, they're all doing like kind of a pillow fort to show that they're not aggressive, I guess. This is like 30 minutes after they just killed like 5 people that broke into the pizzeria. But you've got Vanessa and Mike being really nice to each other. It's a good atmosphere. But then Vanessa bizarrely turns around to Mike before she gets back in the car and says, if you bring your kid sister here again, I'm gonna shoot you. Not arrest you, by the way, because she is, you know, a policewoman, not just another security guard. Not arrest, I will shoot you. Despite the fact that 5 minutes prior, they were building a pillow fort and they had like a happy music montage. I think if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan and you're going there for the lore, you will like this film. You'll really enjoy it because they really do try to cover every single plot thread. Not the stuff from like, let's say Five Nights at Freddy's 4 where you're a kid in a bedroom.
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.
Or the sister location stuff, but they do cram enough of the lore in to at least set up, I'd say, the original trilogy with some additions as well, because like I said, you've got Vanessa, who wasn't a thing until like Security Breach. Now, another problem with this film as well is, like I said in the previous video, it is PG-13. So a lot of the kills, pretty much all of the kills that you see are off screen, or it's kind of just more implied. And I get it, if you don't show the horror, it could actually be more terrifying because your brain kind of has to fill in the pieces. But with here, I really feel that if it got a mature rating and there was actually some more gore and stuff, then it would have been at least something you could look back to or just see as a clip on TikTok. There's this one part in the film where a woman that breaks into the pizzeria, she kind of reaches into this like Freddy Fazbear mask, and then it bites her off. And it's not just like her head, like the bite of 87. You can literally see half of her torso just fall off, like she was made of paper or something. Like I said earlier, if you enjoy the lore, you're going to enjoy this film, but I feel like a lot of the substance was actually removed to make time for the lore. Now, I've talked about a lot of the good actors. There were some also truly terrible actors in the film. I'm not sure if you've seen that extra that was in that Doctor Strange film. This woman sat behind Benedict Cumberbatch and she's just looking around like this, almost like she thinks she's going to get like a primetime Emmy or something. There was one woman in the film, her acting was not good. Who did she play again? Was it Mike's mom? Yeah. Mike's aunt, that's right, yep. And you can tell that she's estranged, she's just not a nice person, but there is no subtlety conveyed to that whatsoever. It's funny how this woman was wrote to be basically a bigger supervillain than William Afton, who was known for, actually being a child serial killer. At one point in the film, like mild spoilers here, she hires a bunch of people to break into the pizzeria so Mike loses custody of his kid sister. And it even goes as far to the point where the babysitter that watches the kid's sister while Mike's away at work is like in on it. And she's like basically on the aunt's payroll to ruin Mike's life. But I'll be honest, having a film with like a couple dozen actors and like one of them being really bad, that's really not too bad. Now, I'm sure one thing you've seen all over your YouTube feed and TikTok is the YouTuber cameos. This isn't like a YouTuber cameo film. There's only two that actually appear in it. You've got Corey Kenshin and Matt Pat. Matt Pat's cameo was probably as good as it could be for Matt Pat. He even managed to, get out, that's just a theory.
Some people say that, but, it's just a theory.
Are you being...
But apparently, that was probably part of a contract because he gave so much lore and information over to the writers so they could write the story. Again, probably another reason why this film was so bloated with giving every single aspect of the story. Corey Kenshin's cameos were very different. He was good. I like the stuff he said. His role was good. Again, it was just a cameo. But it felt like it broke up the film too much and it almost turned into a bit of a comedy. You've got this one bit where Freddy actually escapes the pizzeria and then he... I'm not sure whether he kills the aunt or not. It's kind of implied. But then how did he get all the way out of the pizzeria to the house? But then to get back to the pizzeria, he gets inside of a taxi and Corey Kenshin is the taxi driver. And I think he just looks back at them and he goes like, why do I always get the degenerates or something like that?
Where to? Why do I always get the weirdos?
I get in horror films, you can have a little bit of comedic relief and it really does help break the tension, but it really did feel like they shot the entire film and then they were like, oh, we can get Corey Kenshin on this. And then they kind of slot his sections in afterwards. Now, I'm sure you've also heard there aren't a lot of jump scares in the film. I actually really like that because one thing I do hate doing is going to see horror films in cinemas. I think the last horror film I saw was Smile. And that was just me basically sat in the cinema with my fingers in my ears going... And then before that, in the UK, I saw this film called The Boy 2 with my girlfriend and PewDiePie. And that was one of the worst horror films I've ever seen. So this, out of all the horror films I've seen in a cinema, which is 3... this is the best one. And this film, like I said, basically has no jump scares. And that can usually be a good thing because if there's less jump scares when they hit, they really hit. But the jump scares in this film are very cheap. I think there's one point where Mike opens a locker and then there's just the balloon boy, but not the actual balloon boy, just like a little model toy of the balloon boy. And it just does this artificial zoom in and plays a loud audio stinger. And then it happens again. And then it happens a third time with Corey Kenshin in the car. Again, it almost felt like they had to add the jump scares because without them, it wouldn't really be a horror film, almost more of like a thriller because, again, it's a PG-13 film. There's not really much you can do in the sense of gore. You've got to rely more on jump scares, and there really just weren't a lot of jump scares in this film. Another cool thing about the film as well is I didn't even realize this until like halfway through, but it's set in the 90s. Obviously, no one's got a smartphone. Everyone uses the old CRT monitors. And when Mike actually goes to the pizzeria for the first time, he's got to watch an instruction tape, which is on a VHS with his name scrawled on it. One thing that's really apparent though, whether you really enjoyed the film and you're a diehard fan or you absolutely despised it, this was a huge financial success. I think the budget was only around $20 million or so, and already worldwide, it's made $130 million. But that is pretty common with Blumhouse projects. It is very low budget for, Hollywood. It's a lower budget film, but it sees insane returns because people just love horror films. They can't get enough of it. And I'll be honest, even though I've got problems with the film, I'm happy that it's out there, that it exists, that we live in the timeline where the FNAF film actually got made, because video game films, they usually suck. This is probably the best video game film I've ever seen. Again, I still do have some problems with it, but overall, I'm happy that it exists. Now, I've tried looking online to see if there's going to be like any kind of follow-up film or any kind of sequel, because usually at this rate, the way stuff is so franchised, it's going to have a film, and then it's going to have a TV spin-off series, and then it's probably going to have a film based off that TV spin-off series. The ending, without giving away major spoilers, definitely does set up a sequel. It's not like an open and shut case. So there is every chance that there could be a sequel, but I'm not really sure where they'd go from here, because obviously you've got so many characters from different installments of Five Nights at Freddy's. So the next installment would probably be even further detached from the actual franchise. So yeah, overall, Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the films of all time. And just so I don't get cooked on Twitter again, I'll give it a 10 out of 10.